This episode is brought by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you!
Hello everyone and welcome back to a new episode of Paleo Myths, a series where I explore the possibility of long repeated tropes in paleo media. Today, I'm doing something a little different. This next myth isn't some feature or behavior that remains in question. Instead, we'll be evaluating a common perception of paleo art and paleontology itself. You see, the non-avian dinosaurs died out about 66 billion years ago, long before the first humans were able to put pencil to paper, or paint to a wall. Without anybody around to view them and most other extinct organisms, the common sentiment is that we don't know at all how they really looked, lived, and behaved. Paleoartists and paleontologists as a whole are merely guessing when portraying these iconic creatures. In reality, they would have looked and acted much differently than expected since we have them all wrong.
I have no knowledge of any of this! This is so bizarre!
This is a common sentiment I've heard repeated many times before. But what pushed me to make this paleo myth is a meme that's been circulating the internet for a few years now that's popped up on my feed several times in between all the offensive and Gen Z brain rot memes. Immediately upon seeing this, my brain creates angry thoughts. So guys, do paleo artists really not know what they're doing? Do we have no clue what the paleofauna of Earth's past looked like? Will we one day discover that dinos were radically different? Let's dig this up. Alright, going back to the meme, this is the part where I ruined the joke by explaining it. Thankfully, it wasn't funny to begin with.
Now the main problem area is up here. All of this going on up here is what's causing me the most physical discomfort. It's like a visceral reaction of discontent coming from this area. This area is not good either. I hate this, but I'm mainly worried about this.
Being dumb can be funny if it's done intentionally or ironically. Too bad the meme comes across more like that one kid from our college classes who believes they have the most brilliant ideas to contribute, but whenever they open their mouth, it's the stupidest thing you've ever heard. Now, I don't know who exactly shared the meme first, so I'm not trying to shoot shots at anyone in particular, but these are easily debunkable when you apply any amount of logic, and I'm sure someone in the comments is going to argue, but it's just a joke, bro. The age-old excuse for when your point fails, but the point was made comedically, so you pretend you weren't trying to make an actual point in the first place. There's clearly an air of, wow, isn't this fascinating to ponder? Isn't this like how we depict dinosaurs today? You'll see plenty of commenters picking up this line of thinking. One may argue that it's me who's reading too much into the joke and these implications are figments of my imagination. Then why do the commenters constantly bring up portrayals of dinosaurs? So it's clearly not just me. To break this down, as we can see, the skeleton of an animal may look very different from the living, breathing organism with flesh and color and integument. There are some features that the fossil record simply does not tell us. We only know what extant animals look like because they're still alive and we can see them for ourselves. Though there are rare cases like the thylacine where we have pictures or videos of them. With only bones to make inferences from, paleo artists wrap some skin on the bones, accentuate the awesome features like teeth, horns, and ridges, then call it a day. New scary movie monster unlocked. So, what if in some catastrophe we lost all of Earth's beautiful biodiversity, including all records of it? Aliens who never encountered them and could not find photographic evidence of their existence would only have the bones to rely on, essentially starting from scratch. Without the same knowledge we have of our diverse fauna today, those visitors to Earth would reconstruct our creatures totally wrong by simply draping skin onto their bones, since there's no way to figure out all the gnarly structures they have. But hey, wait a minute. Us humans don't actually have pictures or videos of non-avian dinosaurs. Wow, what if we're imagining them totally wrong in the same way? What if paleontologists have it all wrong?
You have been cheated and lied to!
I knew it!
Although not explicitly stated in the short text of a meme, it is implied that paleontologists are really just guessing. Now, I don't want to get stuck in semantics, but a guess is having no clue of the answer. The first definition in the Merriam-Webster dictionary is to form an opinion of from little or no evidence. For the purposes of this video, this is the meaning I'm working with. The experts in paleontology have been making educated guesses since the field truly started, using evidence, even if limited, to draw possible conclusions as to how dinosaurs and other extinct animals lived. Oh, and I should define what I mean by paleoartist. Basically, we could say any artist who recreates or represents prehistoric life. I will also say paleontologist as well, which is someone who studies prehistoric life. Even if they're two different words, the two are not mutually exclusive. Many do both. A few examples being Gregory Paul, Dr. Scott Hartman, Dr. Mark Whitten, Dr. Julius Sotani. Okay, I'm ready to correct this piece of internet brain rot. Let's see what's really happening in paleo reconstructions. Are the paleo artists really just guessing, throwing skin onto skulls and calling it a day? The most dangerous, most pervasive lies are the ones that contain hints of truth. Those glimmers of truth draw masses who may ignore the heaps of defecation around them. It is true that mainly in the 90s and 2000s there was a common trope in many dino depictions to shrink wrap them, making them essentially living skeletons. Jurassic Park is the prime example. With its well-deserved financial and critical success, it went on to inspire designs in future media for better and for worse. To be fair to Jurassic Park, Crichton and Spielberg incorporated the unknown into their work, adding surprise features and behaviors because, well, there are things we can't know from the skeletons. In recent years, this still happens from time to time with some bad eggs, bad hombres of paleo media. You know, we get the scary teeth sticking out, cinematic roars, uncontrollable urge for combat, and many species look like they could use a trip to grandma's cause they're starving, man.
Except you gave me the ugly!
Is this all scientists and or paleo artists? No, not even a majority today, I would say. Any competent creators who actually care about paleontology avoid these mistakes. Over the past 20 to 30 years, we've been seeing artists grow more bold in terms of how they portray these creatures, as the connections to birds, their avian descendants, became more and more apparent through the discoveries of preserved evidence of feathers in many species. So, for the past few decades, lots of experimentation has been done in bizarre structures and behaviors, similar to what we see in our modern dinosaurs. Yeah, this may come across as guesswork, but paleo artists need to fill in some blanks, speculating how they could have looked and behaved instead of, once again, portraying killer skeletons. You can't have it both ways. You can't criticize paleontologists for being too conservative, just shrink-wrapping creatures and making them monsters, and then criticize other art for simply being guesses, because they are trying to incorporate those unknowns. There are some aspects of their appearances and their lives that we may never know without a proper time machine, so it's better to explore some plausible possibilities rather than sticking to the overly generic behaviors such as hunting, grazing, and fighting. In fact, some depictions may be going too far in the other direction than what the meme implies. On occasion, we see speculative structures that go against what the evidence tells us just for the sake of standing out, being unique and new when a more conservative approach would have been better. I've been discussing paleo reconstructions over the past 30 years, but really, scientists have never been as stupid as the meme implies. Ever since the first dinosaurs were found and described in the 1800s, paleontologists used the evidence available to them in order to make inferences about their appearances, their diets, their behaviors, all that good stuff. Iguanodon is a perfect example. Gideon Mantell, upon him or his wife Mary finding peculiar teeth, Mantell contradicts his story, believed to have found the remains of a giant herbivorous reptile, which he was correct in. Upon the acquisition of more complete remains from the town of Maidstone in England, Mantell drew up a crude interpretation of the beast with some inaccuracies that are obvious today, though still possibly the best one could have created at the time. Soon came the Crystal Palace Park statues too, which preserved the great horned lizard monster look. Over the years, the portrayal of Iguanodon would change with more dino discoveries in America and more specimens of the giant herbivore being unearthed in Belgium. The point being that dino depictions have been improving for as long as we've known about them. When new evidence comes to light, experts return to the drawing board to reimagine the creatures we thought we knew. With the little evidence they had, some tooth fragments, researchers in the early 1800s were able to make some very correct deductions. At each step, as more fossils came to light, interpretations improved. 200 years later, sure, we don't know everything, but have come a very, very long way in regards to accuracy. So, no, scientists aren't simply guessing, instead discovering more and more evidence to make better, educated guesses. Though, again, maybe I can throw a bone here. Of course, we don't know everything, and I'm sure we still have a lot to learn. In 50 years, maybe our interpretations today will look silly.
I guess you guys aren't ready for that yet. But your kids are gonna love it.
All this talk of speculative features and behaviors happened to be the exact topic of a book called All Yesterdays by John Conway, C.M. Kozman, and our old pal featured in Prehistoric Planet, Darren Naish. In it, they explore possible behaviors and designs that we don't normally think about, especially not in association with dinosaurs, and creatively apply them. Their last segment, All Today's, does the reverse, similarly to the meme, applying some bad habits of paleo portrayals into the animals of the present to get some bizarre results. Portraying what we know are fluffy, chunky, and feathery animals as the nightmare fuel made to look menacing, as perhaps we have done with paleofauna. Some images from the book are even used in the memes themselves. So why do I give this book a pass as well as a high recommendation while I condemn the meme? Aren't they arguing the same thing? Well, not quite. The authors make sure to clarify how this isn't actually our current state or the norm for paleo art. This isn't some harsh condemnation of experts today, instead being a fun thought experiment, speculating some creative possibilities to highlight how animal these animals were. All Yesterday strikes a healthy balance of bringing new and interesting ideas to the table that may be considered, while not demeaning the illustrators or experts behind our reconstructions. Much credit is given to the creators who are or have been conducting thorough research in order to make the most accurate yet visually pleasing art possible, while acknowledging that there are still unknowns. As soon as the first paragraph, right when you open the book, Dr. Naish writes, "We need to be clear from the start that while there are many things we are surely getting right, there are many other things that have to be regarded as known unknowns and even unknown unknowns. The point isn't that we know nothing and suck at our jobs. It's that we already have lots of sure information, but acknowledge that there are other aspects we can't know or don't even know we don't know yet." The Boondocks has a great scene on this.
What?
English, do you speak it?
Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is that there are known knowns and that there are known unknowns, but there's also unknown unknowns. Things we don't know that we don't know.
What?
Say what again?
Then for All Today's, we're given a similar scenario with future alien paleontologists who have never seen our modern biodiversity. It's meant to be an absolute worst case scenario. Aliens with no evidence whatsoever of what life on Earth looks like finding fossils. It's not meant to reflect the reality of our current situation. Besides, over time in this fictitious setup, I'm sure with enough discoveries, aliens would get closer than this, like how us humans have been steadily progressing in our understanding of the past. Although the meme on paper has the same premise, and one could argue that it's not really a critique of paleo art or paleontology as a whole, there's no statement that it isn't. Viewers aren't given those mental barriers to prevent their minds from swerving off course to apply this line of thought to its natural conclusion. Why do you think there are always those in the comments who mention dinosaurs? And yes, it is a meme. You can't expect a whole text wall explaining the meme to come along with it. but that explanation, that level of nuance, it seems like the creators have bad intentions, or maybe unintentionally so, are spreading misinformation. For the final section of this video, it's time for us to look inwards and ask ourselves the big questions. How do we know what dinosaurs and other paleofauna looked like? Or maybe more accurately, how are we getting closer to knowing what they looked like? Well, there are many huge signs or small hints keying us in on the answers. Number 1, most obviously, new fossil evidence. New discoveries either in the field or in fossil collections let us fill in new pieces of the puzzle. Many species are named from scrappy material where huge swaths of the skeleton are missing. Without new finds, we may have no idea what the rest of the animal looked like.
Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down?
But as experts go back into the field, new discoveries are constantly being made that help us piece the picture back together. We have many examples, but probably the most infamous is Spinosaurus. Not only did Ernst Stromer possess select parts of the African predator when he named it in 1915, but they were bombed to dust during World War II. Only due to recent expeditions into North Africa do we have a much better understanding, now knowing of its shorter legs and paddle tail. With some other dinosaurs, sometimes we're even lucky enough to find traces of integument, such as skin impressions or traces of feathers. Of course, it should be noted that there aren't these big categories to be lumped into, that you're either scaly, feathery, or smooth-skinned. There are different variations of each category that can create very varied appearances. You can't tell me that an ostrich and a penguin look the same. Number 2, melanosomes. Building off from new discoveries, sometimes once every couple of years, we get super lucky to find such beautifully preserved remains that, by the grace of God, researchers can even observe their melanosomes. Basically, melanosomes are organelles that produce and store pigmentation. By comparing those found in these amazing finds with those of modern animals, we know which melanosomes hold which colors, so what experts once thought was impossible, knowing the colors of dinosaurs, has become a reality. This is true of a select few cases of non-avian dinosaurs, such as Anchiornis, Microraptor, Psittacosaurus, Borealopelta, and Sinosauropteryx. Again, this is a small amount compared to the hundreds and hundreds of known species, but dang, we pretty much got these down. Maybe not 100% exact, though very close. Number 3, osteological correlates. Even if all we have are the fossil remains of what used to be bone, paleontologists can still extrapolate the appearance of soft tissue to an extent by studying the clues given on the skeleton. The skeleton, would you believe it, anchors skeletal muscle. Researchers can see where the muscle connects to the bone. Although the exact size of muscles can be disputed, we understand what the general shape of an animal would have had solely based on the skeleton. If we're lucky enough to find more complete specimens, you'll also find clues for bumps, crests, bosses, you name it. If a bumpy rugose texture is found on the snout, as is the case in the large South American predator Meraxes, this is an indication that it was covered in a lumpy, bumpy, cornified covering. No boss-like feature has been preserved, but clues on the bone, the nasals, are proof of its existence. Number 4, relatives. Unfortunately, those amazing, mostly complete specimens that leave us in awe are by far the exception and not the rule. Most finds are scraps. Loads of dinosaurs are named from a handful of fragments. Some parts of the body are more diagnostic, more variable than others, so it's easier to determine if you have a new genus or species, but still, you're missing most of the body. In cases like these, most gaps are filled in by their closest known relatives. All Today's has a funny page about if aliens just found a manatee skull, they'd assume manatees were large land herbivores like other Afrotherians. With more finds by extraterrestrial scientists in this hypothetical, of course they would eventually figure it out. Although this is an extreme example that may not be too applicable to non-avian dinosaurs, there are pitfalls in assuming too much. The rest of Pyroraptor per se may look somewhat different than the generic dromaeosaurid look we give it. Maybe there was a crest or some weird feathering somewhere, who knows. At least we're in the right ballpark though. Number 5, and lastly, modern analogues. Many species of the past have some descendants or closely related animals around today that we can draw inferences from, giving us information on what traits are common and what is possible within their groups. Easy example, if you find remains of a long dead snake, it obviously possessed scales, since those are ancestral to snakes as a whole. All snakes have scales. An example of what is not possible, or very unlikely, comes from a source you may be familiar with. Although I script, record, and edit each video by myself, I'm more than happy to ask for the opinions of actual paleontologists. I reached out to PhD candidate Amelia Zietlow from the Skeleton Crew about mosasaurs, a subject she's extremely knowledgeable on, and why she views more whale-like depictions as inaccurate. Basically, reptiles and mammals don't store fat in the same way. Because Mosasaurus is a reptile and a lizard, the expectation is that they cannot create blubber like mammalian whales. When reptiles do store fat, it's usually in a specific location, like the tail. Either that or it's overfed, as seen in my sister's chunky Uromastyx. Some ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs evolved similar structures to blubber, she said, but still differently structured and not to the same extent. But those lineages were around for much longer, having more time to develop new adaptations. This paleo meme and all yesterday's frequently makes comparisons between reptiles and mammals, even though they should come with different expectations. Like, I'm sorry, but an Allosaurus didn't have the same chubby face of a hippo, or the hair of a cat. Don't compare apples with oranges. So by studying modern creatures, conclusions can be drawn about extinct ones, what they can or cannot have done. Unless some radical new discovery upends our understanding. Scientists use several other methods to determine the appearance and behavior of extinct animals, but these are some good examples. I mean, in each of my accuracy reviews, I give examples of what we know now and how, but that's good enough for now. Let's close this out. The answer to this paleo myth is the nuanced one. Sorry if I battled through some points that needed more clarification or tiptoed through some obvious ideas. I do have a lot of hoops to jump through for this. There is a lot we know, yet still plenty of uncertainties. Be sure to know the difference and not mix up the two. Even with limited information, experts have continually done their best with what they had. Genuine attempts at reconstructions, trying to snap a picture of the past, shouldn't be dismissed as empty guesses. To be fair though, there have been many fails, many bad ideas that have been immortalized in art, but simply, we know more than we used to. How I grade this paleo myth depends on how you phrase it. Are paleo artists stupid? Well, paleo artists who actually care about accurately bringing paleofauna to life?
That idea is just the worst.
But if you want to ask, can we accurately reconstruct dinosaurs today? Perhaps. Do we know everything about dinosaurs?
That idea is just the worst.
Are paleontologists just guessing?
Back to formula.
Well, those are my overly long ramblings on paleo art, spurred on by an unfunny meme that intentionally or unintentionally spread ignorant views of paleontology. I got to read some good books on the subject, and I hope you got something out of this too. And remember, if you enjoyed this episode, to please leave a like, subscribe, and to check out my social media. See you next time.